I am super excited. And I know I say that before every interview that I'm excited and I have this special person coming in, but it's because it's true. And I'm especially excited because I think this is a person that understands a lot of what we go through when we're trying to find who we are, some of the things that we're missing and some of the things that we have too much of. So without further ado, we have Mr. Nelson Whiting. Wait, see,
Yeah.
that's why I asked you before the show. Whiting.
Whiting, yeah.
Could it be Whiting if
Yeah,
no.
people say Whiting, but it's Whiting. Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of like cute, right? Like my name.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
could be
exactly.
cool, cute. I call Kev. I don't mind. Just, hey guy, I know you're talking to me. So that's important.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to have you here. And I mean, before that, you give your introduction. Who are you? Who you see yourself as? And what do you do?
Oh man, well that's three different questions. So I mean, who am I? Nelson Whiting. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I run a clinic here in Utah. We help people remotely all over the world. So that's kind of what I do as far as my profession, what I'm an expert in. I've been doing this for about 7 years. We've helped thousands of people with kind of across the spectrum of mental health issues. Um, and that hypnotherapy modality that we might get into more so into the podcast here is what I think intrigues a lot of people that we could talk about more. But myself, I mean, I'm just kind of your average guy that's super intrigued with the power of the mind, and went back to school after getting my degree in philosophy. Went back to school to get a clinical hypnotherapy certification, and I'm fairly entrepreneurial. So I thought, well, hey, let's start a business with this and see how many people we can help. And I picked that profession specifically because it was in comparative studies, national statistics wise, it just blows everything else out of the water as far as therapies go from my research. And, this is obviously debatable and anyone could probably argue with me on that. But from what I'm seeing statistically, my personality, when you ask about me, my personality is I have kind of a high BS detector and I tend to be very analytical. And so I want to see exactly what's working, what's not working. Maybe it was my philosophy degree that kind of instilled that in me, but I just wanted to see what's working, what's not working, where are the cracks, why are some things way more effective than other things, and can they be repeatable? And do I have to have some sort of like special intuition or energy work, like ability to do this? And fortunately with hypnotherapy, you don't need to do that. It's fairly mechanical. I run a school where I train certified clinical hypnotherapists through the National Guild of Hypnotists, which is the largest certifying body of hypnotists in the world. And so we have to have it really reduced down to a science that anyone could come and get qualified to help somebody else in. But it also is usually regulated by the state. And so we have to kind of run our practice under psychology regulations through, the Department of Psychology licenses and the state statutes. But what that means is that it's regulated more so than most people think. And the profession itself, I picked partly because of the studies and the research that I found. But when you ask about me personally, who am I? I'll share a story with you as to why I got into this. Because of my first exposure to it 20 years ago at my high school all-nighter party here in Springville. We had a hypnotist come for entertainment purposes, and there were about 500 people sitting in the audience. This was like midnight, right? All-nighter party. So we got all these people sitting in the auditorium, and the guy starts talking to us about how the subconscious mind works. And I got very intrigued by it. And I thought, I want to participate in this. Let's see what happens. So he brought us all up on stage, and there are about 40 of us just sitting in these chairs on this wood floor stage. And I was on the very, very end. And he starts relaxing us, right? Doing his little hypnotic induction thing. And I thought, okay, I'll just play along, follow instructions, see what happens. And next thing you know, I'm like off in la la land in my mind, almost like I fell into this like daydreaming state. And I can hear this guy's voice in the microphone super loud. And he just goes, go even deeper, go even deeper, go even deeper. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And I'm going deeper and deeper. And I start to get so relaxed, like my head falls back and I'm like, limp in the chair. And then he took us even deeper. In that last one, he said, just go as deep as you possibly can. And I just fell out of my chair. And I fell all the way out of my chair and I slammed my head so hard on the wood floor. it just reverberated throughout the entire auditorium, and I could hear everyone's gasp, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I heard that, but I didn't feel a thing. No pain. There was no bump or bruise later. I thought, wow, this is wild. I'm so relaxed. I felt no pain there. I'm just laying there on the floor having this almost orgasmic type experience. Speaking of seduction, it was really weird, actually. But I'm laying there having this experience, and he tried to get me to start playing along, you know, doing the entertainment stuff for all the audience. And what's interesting here is now, looking back, I understand now there are stages of hypnosis that you can put someone in. And depending on which stage they're in, the depth of trance that they're in will create different phenomena inside their mind. And in this case, I had fallen all the way down into what's called the Esdale state. It was named after James Esdale, who did a bunch of open bowel surgeries with no chemical anesthesia. Over 3,000 of them using this hypnotic induction to put people into this state. And what's interesting about the state is that the person is in such a relaxed state, they become unresponsive. That's why they call it the hypnotic coma. It's not really a coma because they can go in and out of it if they want, but they become so relaxed, they become unresponsive. So he started to ask me to do things, and I didn't want to participate. I just wanted to stay in that very relaxed, amazing state. It was euphoric. It was ecstatic, right? And everyone else is in kind of a lighter state, and they all started participating and having fun. And the guy just like ignored me, and I just stayed on stage in this like weird funk for the rest of the show. But the whole rest of the night, I go back down into the audience, and the whole rest of the night until like 6:00 in the morning, I'm just walking around like I'm like, what is this weird state that I just experienced, and why am I kind of in this hangover from it? Anyway, so that kind of introduced me to hypnosis in general. Before that, as a senior in high school, I was getting into some kind of advanced classes, but I was kind of an average student. And so I needed help, and I didn't want to necessarily cheat, but I came across a book called Double Your Brain Power, and I thought, that's what I need if I'm going to ace all these classes. And it gave me a breathing technique that puts you into the alpha learning state. It's called the optimum learning state. And in that state, you can absorb information and then regurgitate it very easily. That was from a book by Julie Marie Stein, I think was her name. It's just a breathing technique, basically box breathing for 7 rounds of box breathing, and then telling yourself affirmations like I'm a phenomenal learner. I have great memory recall. I love learning, that kind of stuff. You do it 3 times. So it takes like 5 minutes to put you into that state. But then I could absorb all of my anatomy, medical terminology, and ace all my tests 100%, which blew my mind. But that was my first introduction to using the power of my own mind, leveraging what I was now understanding was a power that I could access, and I could do it on command. And what I didn't realize was that I was practicing self-hypnosis.
Actually, that's one of the questions I want to get to, right? Because I mean, it's so interesting, even how you got into it. But I want to go back really quick before I forget to the beginning where you talked about philosophy major, because that was my beginning journey into it. That was what I was pursuing when I started going to college, and I left it. I'd actually dropped out completely because I was very gun-ho about it. You know, I was all the honor, philosophy classes. I'm in the philosophy club. I'm doing all the philosophy things that you could philosophically do. And the dean, she was also one of the instructors. And, you get to know, you're in so many classes. And one day we just had a break, and she's talking to me outside. She said, well, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do philosophy? Why do you want to learn this? And I said, well, I want to write books, and I want to create my own theories and philosophies. And she's like, but you can do that now. And I was like, it was kind of like a statement so nonchalant that I was like, she's right. And then she goes, because even if you get this degree, it's not like they're hiring down at the philosophy factory down the street.
Yeah, you don't get a job out of a philosophy degree. Yeah.
No, exactly. It's a philosophy store. So it made so much sense that I could not, I don't think I went to class after that. Like she was so right. And I felt like it wasn't that it was a waste of time. It's that I needed to get to that point to hear that and understand that everything that I wanted to do, I could do right now. But I just wanted to touch on that because I know it's kind of like people in the philosophy majors. I think we all have a certain type of similar kind of hunger for information and learning.
Hmm.
And I think that that's really what philosophy is. And I think sometimes we think that we must learn all of these things so that we're a
Yeah.
philosopher, when really sometimes those things may hinder your own philosophy, because now, well, Socrates said this, well, Aristotle said that. How can I? No, you could have come up with something even better, but now you never will, because you are kind of limited by what you did learn. Anyway, that we could go into deep
Yeah.
philosophical
Yeah. Yeah. No,
discussion.
definitely. That's interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. Where did you go to school?
I went to I started at community college, East Los Angeles College, but then I just dropped off. And
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah.
actually I was in honor classes, and I had a scholarship for UCLA. Like everything was like I was already ready to transfer to UCLA and continue my philosophy journey, which I call
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it was like, who knows? Maybe it could have been good, but I think that you kind of become a little bit boxed in. Well, you kind of stepped out of that into a different realm, but I think sometimes you get boxed in, and that's when you end up being some lawyer, or you end up like really not a philosopher. Like you're not out in the world spreading
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
philosophy. You end up working at some repetitive job, and you're not actually like, I don't know. I think philosophy, the education of philosophy has to be really, if you're going to be a lawyer or something, and you just need that pre is great. But if you really about, you love the learning part of it, the why are we here? Who are we? And I understood that when I asked you, who do you see yourself as? Most people, they just tell you, yeah, I have a business, I'm an entrepreneur. And you took it literal and you went into, this is who I am. And that's a
Existential,
philosopher.
man. Yeah.
That's a philosopher
Yeah.
answer right there, because most people would just be, yeah, I'm a father. I'm a father of two. Or, they're very limited in that. And when you're like, who am I? Well, I'm this being that's in this world. And so thank you for
Yeah.
that. And another thing I wanted to touch on because you touched it on as well, is that I didn't know that philosophy was, well, I never even, no philosophy, hypnotherapy was regulated. And can you tell me a little bit more about that, and to what extent? You know, I had no, I mean, I never even thought about it.
Yeah, yeah, it depends. I'm actually not sure what the exact regulations are in the state of California. Here in the state of Utah, it falls under the Department of Psychology licenses. So it's not a licensed profession, it's a certified profession, but the schools still have to be registered that certify people in it. And, you're still bound by certain regulations. There was a guy recently in the state of Utah who was just convicted, uh, went to jail for different things that he did. Just recently this year, he was a hypnotherapist, um, and that'll probably tighten up some regulations here. We haven't had problems with hypnotherapists here in Utah since like the 70s. That's like one of the first ones in a long time. So they might tighten up some regulations. As far as regulations, really what they're saying is that you can't claim to be a mental health counselor. You have to give disclaimers that you don't prescribe, you don't treat, you're not a medical doctor. I can't prescribe medication. We don't treat, we don't heal, we don't do any of that stuff. So we can't really say any of that. And, for example, in context of what I specialize in, what we market for is we help guys, mainly Christian guys, faith-based men, overcome pornography problems. And we call them pornography problems or compulsive pornography habits or porn viewing habit or something like that. We don't call them an addiction, partly because an addiction falls under the DSM-5 manuals of an actual diagnosis that a psychiatrist can make, right? And so we have to be careful saying stuff like depression, anxiety, and addictions, because those are all formal diagnoses, right? So we say other things, sadness and fear, worry, and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which is kind of silly that we have to tiptoe around it. But reality is they're all the same kinds of things that we get to just give different names and not have to worry about the label, but just say, hey, describe what your problem is and let's work on it. You know
Yeah,
what I
it's
mean?
like soy milk. I think they were getting sued or something. I think they might have even had to change the name because it's not milk.
Right.
Yeah, it was a big deal with the milk industry saying it's not milk, it's a soy beverage or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's the same market. People are going to buy that no matter what it's called. But I understand. But and the reason I bring that up because so if I wanted or if I learned and I start watching YouTube videos and I learn to hypnotize people, can I get in trouble? And I know that California, different states have different, but can I get in trouble for practicing hypnosis without a license if I'm doing it, I don't know, to my friends or?
No, no, stage hypnosis, entertainment hypnosis, the Hollywood kind of stuff for comedy and stuff like that. No, I mean, it's just a fun kind of game that you can play. It's when you start claiming to be healing people or pretending to be like a mental health counselor, a talk therapist, or something like that, an advisor in any kind of capacity where you're making claims about curing people. That's where you can get in trouble with that. There are a lot of people that do it still, that are not. Maybe making the right claims. And I think that some things are over regulated. Um, some things should be pretty regulated, but I think the reason that obviously the psychology industry, the reason that's so regulated is because if you tell somebody they have anxiety and then they think they need to go get an anxiety medication, that's a big deal. Because now if they're on an SSRI or a benzodiazepine because you said that, and they can go commit suicide, like that's bad news, right? You got to be very careful with what you're saying.
Right. And I understand. I mean, I think so. And I also think the regulation is not a bad thing in the sense that it actually validates hypnotherapy as legit. Because if it was like tarot cards or
Yeah.
psychics, right? They're not
Well, and in
regulated.
that sense, the National Institute of Health and the American Psychology Association, the American Medical Association as well have all endorsed hypnotherapy as an orthodox form of therapy, as opposed to complementary or, um, uh, yeah, as opposed to a complementary type service. So they do understand that all the way back to the 50s. And what's interesting is, like, we're waiting around to get endorsed by some big association when that association hasn't even been around as long as hypnotherapy has been around, right?
Yeah.
Hypnotherapy has been around since the 1750s as a really legitimate form of uh, therapy for both chronic illnesses and mental illnesses, chronic physical illnesses and mental illnesses. And it became the foundation for all modern psychology moving forward. Freud was a hypnotist. He was a crappy hypnotist. And he moved out of that and created his own theories that ended up really, in my opinion, really destroying um, the the ability to get someone to fix their problem very quickly and permanently in the fewest amount of sessions possible in a very respectable way. Because as soon as you pulled it into talk therapy, and we're talking consciously, not subconscious information, now you're, like he said, this kind of therapy isn't going to be for the poor because it's going to take 100 to 300 sessions to facilitate a change. Well, that's because he created psychotherapy, and psychotherapy, as compared to hypnotherapy, always loses, like, by a lot. Hypnotherapy comes out like 300 times more effective than traditional psychotherapies that are still being used today. But hypnotherapy has also come a long way. I talked to a guy yesterday who said, "Oh yeah, I grew up in the 60s doing hypnosis on people, and we were hypnotizing everyone, getting them to do things, making them do things." And I said, "Well, the science has come a long way since then. You can't actually make anyone do anything. And there's a reason why you think that you got those results, but you can't make anyone do anything that violates their moral standards unless they consent to it. Because there's always something in the mind that's protecting their belief system, which is really fascinating, because part of the reason why hypnosis has become so acceptable is by understanding that it's not brainwashing, it's not mind control, it's actually increasing your internal control mechanisms to do what it is you believe is right and true and correct for you. So if you're on stage and somebody says, take your shirt off, and you're like, yeah, baby, I have an excuse to show off and act and have fun, I'm going to go do it. Right. But they can't make you do anything, which is really fascinating, because the government's tried to use hypnosis for a long time to try and get people to do things, create the Manchurian candidate, the assassin that doesn't know what they're doing, and they can't be interrogated and can't reveal information. And they've never been able to prove that hypnosis can do that. They have to use a lot of shock therapy and psychedelic drugs on top of suggestions like in hypnosis.
Well,
So it's very different. Yeah.
has that been I know that's more like a conspiracy, but has that been proven? Wasn't there MK Ultra or some
Yeah,
plan?
that was the one. Yeah, that
Okay.
was the one that was trying to use hypnosis, and they couldn't do it with
But
just
did it
hypnosis.
fail, or do we not know that it succeeded?
Well, no, they definitely succeeded in being able to control people, but it's just like if I exert enough influence on you and I threaten to hurt your family and I torture you and I isolate you and the whole time I'm just telling you what you need to be doing, eventually you're going to concede and go do it. And that's what happened.
Okay, so if you don't want to, it wouldn't happen. Or can you force it like that? For example, where you're kind of forcing it physically almost.
Yeah, yeah, physical abuse. Yeah, but that's obviously that's not the same thing as what's happening in like a clinical setting and with hypnosis itself. Because hypnosis, you got to understand that all hypnosis is increasing your focus. That's all it is. From a neuroscientific standpoint, literally that's all it is. When you put someone in a hypnotic state, the two hemispheres of the brain they sync up. You're creating more communication between all different parts of the brain, and you're helping someone increase communication between the limbic system of the brain, the deeper part of the brain, and the conscious part of the brain. And I can unpack what that means if you want, but um, basically, what you're doing in creating focus and increased concentration is creating a flow state that doesn't necessarily mean more intense focus. It means more alignment between all the different parts of the brain where they can now act synergistically. And because you have more parts of the brain working on one small problem or one big problem, now it feels more effortless to accomplish that task and to problem solve because you have all these 19 compartments of the brain that are usually operating on different frequencies. Now they all become coherent. And when they become coherent like that, that flow state that happens, it happens because you slow down that brainwave state, and you basically bring on the subconscious or limbic system part of the brain that is the one that creates behavior. And so when you do that, uh, just by listening very, very carefully to the person who is giving you instructions, it's uh, it's a layered process of getting somebody to do one thing, like, hey, listen to me, breathe and you will relax, right? And close your eyes and it'll help you to see internally. And breathe with your diaphragm, it'll stimulate your vagus nerve to tell your brain to tell your body to relax. And just keep giving them instructions like that. And as long as they continue to play along and follow instructions, just like I did when I fell out of my chair as a senior in high school, they're going to have an experience. But a lot of times that experience feels involuntary. And that's why people come up with, oh, they mind controlled me, because it feels involuntary because you're going to start doing things that you didn't expect. So, like if I were to give you a hypnotic induction right now and you started to kind of fall asleep, you might have those little muscle jerks that you get when you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
Those are, by definition, involuntary muscle jerks. They're a subconscious function. But it's not because I made you do that. It's because you followed along and you allowed yourself to get into that state, and now you're having a reaction.
Is that your body trying to wake you up, or defending against that induction? Like maybe.
No, no, it's not defending anything. It's just dissipating energy as you begin to relax like that. It's a good thing to have.
Okay. And before we move on, because I just want to say, we were talking about Freud, and I feel like there hasn't been anyone else. It's like, I mean, there's other, you know, psychotherapists or psychologists, whatever you want to call that when that world started, because I don't think it was organized before. But I don't think his ideas, and this is an opinion, this is my opinion, but I don't think his ideas were really that great. I don't think that he was the type of, uh, person that was very intuitive. There's rumors that, he was like a cocaine addict and all of these things. So when you look at all of this, that's like saying like some guy talking to himself in the train is telling you you're in love with your mother, and that's now psychology. Like, to me, it's like, have
Yes.
we really studied this? Have we put this through ChatGPT or something and like really figure it out? Because I know that there's a lot of people that are like his fans. Well, psychologists, most of them they go by those teachings. That's what I'm saying about philosophy. When you get boxed in and now you either following Freud or something, like there are no psychologists out there that are mixing or bringing new ideas, or why is that, and why has hypnotherapy, which is obviously a lot more effective and immediate, why is that kind of pushed aside as in, oh, not traditional. This is a tradition. Why? When the other one is just so crazy that you love your mother because what, like to me, that's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Um, Partly because there have been stigmas over the centuries about hypnosis. When hypnosis came to the US in the 1830s, there was religious revival all over the East, and they saw hypnosis as devil worship. Because when somebody would get into the state of hypnosis, sometimes they would have like weird reactions and they would think that they were possessed. They call it before that, Anton Mesmer, when we get that word mesmerism, you've been mesmerized. Franz Anton Mesmer back in the 1750s into the 1800s, early 1800s, that came after him. But he would put these people in this state where they would heal, and he healed thousands and thousands of people in this state. But some of them would go into this weird orgasmic catastrophe state, is what they would call it, which all they were doing is like those muscle jerks when you fall asleep, except more intense, because they're releasing all of this emotion. And so the emotional detox can sometimes end up kind of feeling like a panic attack type thing. But anyway, when it got to the 1830s, that was kind of a stigma, the devil worship thing, and making people think that maybe it was kind of a mind control thing or hysteria. There were a lot of people that came out of the um, kind of the beginnings of hypnosis where they really started to analyze it and say, oh, everyone in that state of hypnosis, they're just in a state of hysteria. And one of those schools was the one from which Freud came in the late 1800s. And that's kind of the beginning of when it was really starting to get picked apart, and they were certifying people, they were teaching people how to do hypnosis, which was a term that James Braid came up with in the mid 1800s, meaning an induction into sleep. But it's not induction into sleep because your mind is staying very aware. Your body kind of checks out almost as like it's going to sleep. The brainwave state goes into a state like it's going to sleep, except that your awareness, your consciousness is still there. It's still following along. And in that state, that's where you create this very interesting phenomena uh, that seem to be happening where people's focus just increases through the roof, and they sometimes they start hallucinating, right? But they don't have to hallucinate, or they have these, you ask one question and this memory from inside the womb will come up for them. And that tends to be the thing that they need to fix the problem, right? So because in the subconscious mind, you have access to all of the imagination, memory, and emotion that you've ever experienced, ever. It's like a storehouse of information down there. So if you were to get somebody into that state properly, and whether you do it through hypnosis or prayer, meditation, or holotropic breathing, whatever it is, if you can get somebody into that state and ask the right kinds of questions, all of a sudden information starts coming up. And it's information that, when I say comes up, the subconscious has come online, so you can get that information, but then it displays to the conscious mind. So the conscious mind can now become conscious of subconscious functions. And in that state, that's where hypnotherapy just excels. Because, hey, you got this information. What are you going to do about it? And now where you want to go with it next. And this is how we do the whole reprogramming to move someone out of, a debilitating so-called anxiety, or a so-called treatment-resistant depression, or suicidal behavior, or any kind of so-called addiction. I mean, none of those problems can resist proper subconscious reprogramming. None of them, if it's done properly.
So
And medication isn't at play.
exactly that's exactly what I was going to bring up, because I feel that it's very obvious that there's an industry that is beyond the help. And I'm just being cynical about it, but to me, it's like writing, for example, why haven't we had another Freud, right? Like out of all these years, no one has excelled in, in, where, to that level. I mean, I'm sure that there's people that are there, uh, expanding, but not to that level with Freud. It's just like he became almost like a demigod god here, where no one's been able to, like, when Albert Einstein developed his theories, there were so many people trying to disprove them. And, and it's still to this day. I mean, that a lot of the things that we discover is because trying to disprove a theory that Albert Einstein had, where he said himself, these are, these are meant for us to learn from here. Where with Freud, like, where are the people, the important people, not, people on the internet? I mean, like the real psychologists trying to disprove his theories. I haven't seen that. I've seen since he came out from my little information on the history is that it was kind of maybe it took some backlash at first, and then it's just been so widely accepted all over the world. That's one. Two, is there an equivalent to a Freud in hypnotherapy? If so, like who would that person you consider to be, and if not, why not? And I know there's a
Yeah.
few questions that are
Yeah. It's a whole bunch of questions. So
yeah.
let's pull a philosophy move on it and dissect them, right? Yeah. I mean, the only reason, in my opinion, that he became so famous was because he had so much financial backing and he had a network that was able to promote his ideas. It was kind of like when, the idea of, a couple hundred years ago, it's totally accepted now in public school that the center of the earth is an iron nickel melting core, right? There's no proof of that. There's no proof of that whatsoever. But it's what's taught now. Now it's actually considered a pseudo theory by a lot of the scientists who are looking at it. But it's like, well, why do we believe that? Well, because 200 years ago there were two different theories that had been proposed, and they had to pick which one they're going to teach in public school. Both of the theories, I mean, they were different: an iron nickel core or an ice, rocky, watery core. Which one was it? The ice, rocky, watery core had more scientific evidence behind it, and all the way up until today has more scientific evidence behind it than an iron nickel core or an iron melted core, right? Um, but that one got a lot more backing, got all the finances, and that became the theory of the day. I think that's what ended up happening kind of with Freud. Um, and there were a whole bunch of people that within about 20, 30 years, we're starting to see that psychotherapy, the way he had proposed it, was not great. One of the guys in the early 1900s, around the same time that Freud was also coming about, that was a psychiatrist. His name was Milton Erickson, Milton H. Erickson. He was a psychiatrist who was turned hypnotherapist, and he was probably the one that, if you're asking, who was the best one, he probably became the best hypnotherapist in the world. And he came at it from a very interesting conversational hypnosis standpoint. He would naturally put people into this very interesting conversational trance. And it's actually a method that we've learned, that we teach in our school, that we use in our day-to-day sessions that we do with people. And the more people copy what he has done, the better their results. The problem is that the reason people locked on to Freud, and the reason Freud got away from hypnosis, he got away from hypnosis partly because he didn't understand it. He admitted this. He didn't understand it. He didn't understand the phenomena. Why is this happening? I can't reduce it to something I can explain. And so he made a big deal about that to people, that, hey, the reason we're analyzing this is so that we can explain it. Well, everyone wants an explanation. But what if we said it was some quantum entanglement? Well, you're not going to understand that unless you understand a whole lot of physics, quantum physics, right? So he didn't have the way to explain exactly what was happening. He didn't have an fMRI to show what was happening in the brain. And all the way up until this day, we can do a hypnotherapy on session and still not know why they have a specific reaction to it. Why they start crying spontaneously when you've really done nothing. Why they have a laughing fit for 10 straight minutes and they cannot control themselves. It's like, I don't know why people are doing this, but they're having an emotional release, some sort of reaction there. He wanted to be able to explain all of that. And he made a big deal that we have to be able to understand it on this logical level. But the subconscious mind, by its functions, is not logical. That's a conscious mind, frontal lobe, neocortex function. That's not a limbic system function. So you're trying to understand, it's like trying to understand, wrap your mind around the idea of a square that you extend and you turn into a cube, and then you extend and you turn into a fourth dimensional cube now. And conceptually, mathematically, we can kind of say, yeah, this is what it would look like, because it would have so many angles, this many coordinates, but we can't actually show you what it is, because it's interdimensional now. And this is where hypnotherapy gets into a really interesting vein, because it's not necessarily like energy work, but it's tapping into senses that are not our normal senses that we use from day to day. I mean, when you're having a vision where you have a spontaneous intuition, meaning you know something without knowing why you know it, where does that information come from? And is this revelation from a higher realm? Is this tapping into a spiritual dimension? Where because there's a lot of indication that there's a lot more information traveling, for example, between me and you, Q, right now than what we can see. You can't really see all the information. There's scalar waves, there's electromagnetic waves, there's all kinds of information and frequency. Now I can put my hand through this nothing between the two of us, but this is not nothing. It's full of information. The ether has already been proved. It's this divine matrix. It's holding tons of information. What is that information? And if we can tap into it, how can we tap into it? And if we did, what kind of downloads would we begin to have? Because that would be a trip.
Yeah, it
It would
already
almost,
is. I think we
yeah.
experienced that. And, just to close it up, Freud is a fraud to me. You don't have to subscribe to that, but it's like, oh, yeah, you love your mother. You want to have sex with her. Like, yo, you're high. And I just feel like anybody else with the standards of Freud today would not be able to come up with have any credibility in today's world. So I just want to say that because I think that it really hurts the other like that. Like we were just like what you mentioned right now about, what is that energy in between us that's not visible. So we're the crazy ones trying to figure that out. But, having sex with your mother is, that's okay. And it doesn't even resolve anything except it leads you to some pills. Oh yeah, you want to have sex with your mother. So here's some pills for the rest of your life. So you're not depressed. I think that the psychology world has just gone so business into these prescriptions and pills and ADHD and we're missing the fact that for millions of years, like, I mean, for thousands of years, we haven't needed pills to survive and to cope with our environment. So now that we have the best, most comfortable life, we don't have lions coming after us. Now we are, depressed. Now we can't function. It doesn't make sense. So I feel like I just want to say that because I think people and everybody that I think if you don't agree with me, then you can just leave it in the comments. But I agree. I just don't think that psychology is the answer because as I've been through a lot of pain and when I was going through a lot of dark periods, that's where everybody would go. Oh yeah, you should go see someone. You should see a therapist. And I'm not against that. Actually, I do see a therapist, but it's really because I want to out of my own, not because I needed it. I feel like we have everything we need to survive, and hypnotherapy is a lot closer to helping you tap into that broken system easier than taking 10 pills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about
Yeah.
medication. And I'm not saying that it's not necessary. I believe there's some people in a spectrum and some people that are extreme. They have mental challenges that are at an extreme location, but most of us, we just need to stop thinking that we are hopeless. Or what's your
Yeah.
philosophy on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. The medication industry, and I always have to be careful to just disclaim I'm not a
Yeah, yeah.
doctor, so I can't tell people to be on or off medication. However, I can cite all the doctors that I want. If you look at people like Dr. Peter Breggin and other psychiatrists who have been, uh, whistleblowers on the whole psychiatry industry, it's not psychology that's the problem. It's the psychology. It's not psychology. It's the psychiatry and the pharmacology that is the problem because now they're creating the drugs, and those drugs we know. SSRIs, for example, if you go look at Peter Breggin's book, all the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, your Prozac and anything in that family, basically, and anything in the we'll stick with that family for now, but these are antidepressant, anti-anxiety medications that were fudged. Those numbers were fudged to get them through the FDA. And when they came through, one of the initial trials was like 1,200 people and only 100 people finished because the side effects were so bad. And then they fudged the numbers because people were committing suicide. They said, oh, well, they would have committed suicide anyway. It wasn't because of the medication. More people are committing suicide on those medications than off. If you really look at the numbers when they go on. And so if you take a drug like that has on the label hey, this is to help with anxiety, but it might increase your anxiety, increase your depression, your mood swings, your irritability, your aggressive behavior, your addiction, your suicidal ideation. Is right there on the label, and it's going to counteract exactly the reason that you were trying to take that to begin with, right? And the grave dangers, I can tell you so many stories of how this backfired for people, because when they call me and they say, "Hey, I want help with anxiety," I say, "Okay, but are you on medication?" And they'll say something like a guy called me the other day, and he said, "Hey, I'm talking to you because my wife wants to divorce me because I can't really hold a conversation with her. I'm kind of detached emotionally. She gets mad at me, and I shut down, and then I get really aggressive, and I have these outbursts, and it's really damaging my connection with her." I said, "Are you on medication?" He said, "I'm on Lexapro." Well, Lexapro is like one of the worst ones you could possibly be on. And I just pulled it up. I just Googled it and I said, negative effects of Lexapro. And I sent it to him in a text. I said, if you got off that, talk to your doctor. But if you were to get off that, every symptom that you described with your relationship with your wife as to why she wants to leave you is one of the side effects of Lexapro. Oh, and by the way, how long have you had that problem with your wife? About 4 years. Well, how long have you been on Lexapro? About 4 years.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you were to get off that, you might just not need hypnotherapy at all.
Wow.
Right. Just be careful with it. And these guys, I can tell you so many stories about this, but the point is, when somebody has a so-called anxiety or depression, they don't have anxious or depressive feelings unless they first have anxious or depressive thoughts. It's not a brain chemical imbalance problem. That's very well proven at this point. What that means is that it's very easily fixed. The reason you're depressed is because you have depressive thoughts. You hate your life for some reason. Same with anxiety. I mean, anxiety can literally just be because your life is so blessed that you don't know what to do and you're bored out of your brain, and an idle mind is the devil's playground. You don't know why you're having these problems, but we can see these root causes. Every time somebody comes in, we can see exactly why they have these so-called treatment resistant intensive problems. And I don't agree with the uh the claims that, well, some people are so bad they need to be on this stuff, because once you put them on, good luck getting them off if they needed it, so to speak, right? And what they needed was a fix, not some spellbinding effect that blunts their emotions so bad that they can't feel the problem, but they also can't feel the upper range of their joy either. And now you got them stuck in this weird emotional state. And in that state of a chemical hack, I mean, I'm a from a Christian background. I think that all this is doing is opening the portal and the window of demons and the voice of the devil to come in and whisper in your ears and screw with you, because a chemical is not going to tell you to go kill yourself,
Hmm.
but a chemical can put you in that state where now you're hearing that voice a lot more.
That makes complete sense. And yeah, when I mentioned about the extreme, yeah, I agree with you that it's not the normal human being walking around, but I'm speaking of brains like serial killers, psychopaths that have, no empathy or emotion because their brain is a certain wired a certain way. Even child predators and people like they admit that they can't help their problem. I think these would be the subjects that maybe you could go into some chemical pills and so on, just to see how to if not help them, but at least control uh some of these people. But the majority of people that are living in a depressive state are people in first world countries. And I've traveled all over the world, and I go to very, very poor places, very remote, and those people have no idea what depression
They're
is.
happy.
Yeah. They're like, depression, what is that? Like, so I believe we manufacture a problem ourselves.
Yeah, they don't have time to be depressed.
No, their depression is that, I don't know, they got to go get water way over there. Like it's, they go through normal hardship as normal, and feeling sad because a girl rejected you. You don't have to now go to your therapist and get, because I think also, and you mentioned something about, it's not really psychology, is the psychiatry and the pharmaceutical, but I believe psychology at some point is the gateway drug into those drugs, because I don't think you go from zero to a psychiatrist. I think you go to, some little bit of therapy, and they tell you how bad you are. And then you go to deeper
Yeah,
therapy, and
no,
then you
that's
go.
true. I agree with that. Yeah,
Yes. And I'm not saying that
definitely.
everybody, and again, I'm generalizing. I mean, I'm sure that there's psychologists out there that are very, um, anti all of that. But I think the majority are are just following what they learn. And then the psychiatrists, they're not bad people, but are they really listening to the problem to help you, or are they listening to the problem to see what drug fits you? Because I believe
Yeah,
they they're trained in a way that they're not listening to see, okay, let me figure this out. This is why you're feeling. No, they're listening to you, everything you're saying, and the question they're asking is so they can see what medication fits those symptoms. So their problem solving is already chemical. I don't think
yeah,
that they have a lot of tools beyond that. Uh, I mean, they do, but I mean, I don't think they employ a lot of tools. It's so much easier to just go in a session and prescribe than to have 4 or 5, 10 sessions trying to go over the same problem over and over in different angles to get this person to get it. Where in hypnotherapy, that's why I'm more of a fan, because you are there to solve that problem. And it might take you 20 sessions, but you're solving that. You within you is not that this magic pill that now you become dependent on is going to solve it temporarily, and while giving you bad side effects in other areas. So,
yeah,
yeah. And I don't want to put you in a position
yeah.
of pills and medicine, because I know that's what we're not talking about at all. So I'm going to even just change it. I'll change it abruptly. Can I hypnotize a girl to just kiss me? Can I go, hey, kiss me? Can I, is that possible?
Hey, if you're charismatic enough, you can do it, right? Just through the power of influence. That's how influence works. And that's what's interesting about hypnosis is that when people say, "Oh, you can make someone do something," it's like that's not hypnosis. You're just using principles of influence. Anyone can do that. Your preacher does that. The school teacher does that. The doctor does that. The politician does that. Principles of influence are not what we're even wanting to employ in a hypnotic setting, not in a clinical hypnotic setting. With clinical hypnotherapy, we want as much voluntary compliance as possible. And as long as you will voluntarily comply and let yourself experience a new process, a new way of thinking, all we do, we're not advisors, we're not counselors. We just want to ask the deep questions. And as trained hypnotists, we can see based on your physical state what depth and level of trance that you're in. And so we want to keep you in that deepest level of trance so that your survival brain doesn't turn back on. The survival brain, when I say the survival brain, uh, you think of the ego, you think of the amygdala in the brain, the one that is the protective mechanism that's going to protect you at all costs. It turns on fight or flight, stress, right? That amygdala won't turn on for me like it will for you and like for the other guy, which means that it's not really trying to protect survival as such. It's only protecting your belief system and what you believe is survival for you. Because what is a threat for you is not a threat for me, which means it's still only built on belief systems. You might run away from the tiger if you're scared of it, but the guy who embraces the tiger, you've seen those guys that are like hugging him. It's like, how in the heck does that work? Right. And so this survival mechanism, though, is what we need to make sure that people are not in when they're when they're trying to do any kind of problem solving. The research shows, and this was really interesting. You'll get a kick out of this. You ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I went to his retreat. When I went to his retreat last fall and in October in Florida, he kept saying this thing, and I was like, that can't be true. That can't be accurate. Like, I believe you that you're a great guy and like your research is solid, but that I don't know if I can wrap my mind around that until he just kept saying it and kept saying it and kept saying it. And they hadn't seen one single exception to this finding. And that was that when they measure people's brainwave states with EEGs and fMRIs and whatnot, if you're trying to solve a problem from within a disturbing emotion or from a survival state, you will make it worse 100% of the time.
Hmm.
100% of the time. They had not found one exception to that. So what that tells you is if Q comes to me and he wants to fix a problem, and I'm a traditional talk therapist, and you're kind of in a panic state because you want to fix this problem and you're desperate to fix it, and you're really worried that if you don't fix it, bad things are going to happen. Like you're in a negative, disturbed emotional state. And then I say, let's just talk logically about this to try and problem solve it. I will make it worse 100% of the time.
Wow. So what do you do? The opposite?
Well, you have to get you out of survival mode. So if you came in and we're having all kinds of panic attack, I have to induce you into trance because now the amygdala will quiet down and the subconscious brain can now communicate with the conscious brain without the amygdala getting in the way and saying, no, we can't have that conversation. It's too dangerous.
Hmm. That makes sense. It's kind of like when they talk about detachment, because if you're attached to a problem or whatever it is that you want to get rid of, the trying to pull it off makes it even
Yeah, it
more.
makes it stick. Yeah, that's that old Buddhist idea, right? You got to embrace your enemy in order to let go of them.
Yeah. It's like the elephant in the room. Now don't look at the elephant, and now you have to. So that makes a lot of sense. And so, do you gotta want the thing that you're fixing to be fixed, or can you help someone if they have a problem and they're not really sure they want to fix it, or I don't know, they're there because their wife kind of forced them to go there, and they have whatever their issue is. Can that person still get fixed or help? Can they improve without innately wanting to?
So let me throw back a question to you. Let's just say if you were that kind of person, do you think that part of you maybe is doing it for your wife because she wants you, but part of you deep down is thinking, yeah, I probably should fix that. That would be good for me.
Yeah, you would, but that's interesting. Yeah, because I think maybe you want to fix the relationship with your wife, and she feels that this is either an ultimatum or this is she feels that this is a way to do it. And even though you don't believe, you go through the motions just that, just to get
Right.
out of your hair. Can it still get the benefits from it, or is is my survival mode on there, or am I blocked?
Yeah. Well, the number one rule for people that are coming in to see us is that they have to be at rock bottom for themselves and not for somebody else. Meaning they have to have that desire to change, and they're going to do it. They're willing to compromise or make sacrifice or really do whatever it takes to make that change. They just need a vehicle to do it. And so we say, yeah, we'll do this. However, at the same time, if you get the kind of people who come in and maybe they're like, hey, I want to fix pornography, but there's a huge part of me that really still likes it. And it's my wife that doesn't really like. I had a call with a guy yesterday. Same thing. We went through the whole call and he said, well, I'm really just doing it for my wife. But then the more I kept asking him, he said, yeah, but actually, like, I feel like I can't connect with God, and I feel like I can't be there for my kids, and it's just like in the back of my head all the time. I don't really like the cravings when they come on. They distract me from what I'm trying to get done, and I do feel like it's kind of moved into an addiction. And I'm like, well, you're just a walking contradiction, man. You're telling me on one hand, you really like you're just doing it for your wife, and there's a part of you that wants it, and then there's this whole part of your life that it's destroying, and you see this inconsistency in somebody's mind. If you talk to someone long enough, no matter what the unwanted behavior is, they'll show you that contradiction. And it's a very strong psychological driver in someone's mind to maintain consistency with whatever they're saying. So if you point that out to them, they'll be like, oh, crap, I do need to fix this, right? So you can help people find that motivation. But even if they say, like the guy yesterday, my wife, we ended up getting her on the line. They were on the brink of divorce. And the only thing that she wanted was for him to stop his porn problem. And he said, okay, I'm doing it for her. I said, don't do it for her. It won't work. Don't come in and see me if you don't have an internal motivator for that. We help people find that motivation internally, but there's a cost there. There's something that's costing them. And I wrote a whole book about what the costs are and what it's doing to people, why it's a negative thing to be engaging with pornography.
What's the name of the book? Sorry to interrupt. I just want to get
it. It's this one right here. Your problem isn't pornography.
More clear? Can you make the title a little bit less ambiguous?
So it's called Your Problem Isn't Pornography, the truth that will save you from yourself at the speed of thought. Guaranteed. Because it is guaranteed. Nobody has a porn problem that they can't pull out of if they want to pull out of it. It's the people who come in and they say, I don't know if I really want to get out of pornography. It's so good for me. And there's so many positives that the positives outweigh the negatives. It's like, okay, well, come and see me when like you've had enough slaps in the face to know that pornography is not a good use of your time. And then we can fix you.
Wow. Okay, so this is the juicy part that we were beating around to get, pardon the pun, but like we were trying to get to. So the okay, there's the religious Christian element. I think if we go there, it's easy. It's black and white, right? Of what's morally right or not. So let's pause that because I don't think there's debate on that, on what that is, and go into just the normal world and in today's modern world, actually. And okay, so pornography, what, like, what's the purpose of this? And I know the purpose, the results, but what is the purpose of this industry? And beyond making money, right? Because I think the making money part is just part of the side effect of it. But what is the real purpose of this industry? Because it's it's so widely available for free, and for something to be so demanded to be that free, I I just don't get it. I think if people want it so much, charging for it at all everywhere would be the norm. What do you think is the purpose in general? And this is just a philosophical question, but like, why does it exist, and why is it so prevalent in our society?
Yeah, I think that there is a question of psychology. The simple neuroscience question is, answer is that it's a dopamine hit, and that it's a very simple, easily accessible dopamine high. But I don't think it's a cultural question. To me, it's not even a philosophical question. It is a religious question. When you ask what is the purpose behind the industry, to me, it's the devil, and he's trying to destroy the family. That's what it is. It's the destruction of the key components that make up a family unit. That, yeah, we'd call it the trad family. The traditional family. You got to have a mother and a father that love their kids. There's a yin and a yang there. That's the balance that all of psychology, the good literature has been able to show us that the nuclear family, the traditional family, is exactly what needs to be there. And the fastest way to destroy that family, statistically, is to get one of the spouses stuck on pornography. Statistically, uh, when I say destroy the family, 2/3. If you look at the statistics in the United States, depends on which ones you look at, but if you really dig in and see, I think they try and fudge some of the numbers, but it's about 66%, about 2/3 of marriages in the US will fail. And you say, well, why are they failing? What are the reasons, the top reasons for divorce? Because a lot of people will say, oh, they fell out of love, or they maybe financial needs. It's infidelity. Infidelity is the number one reason for 2/3 of the marriage in the US failing. And half of the people that were surveyed whose marriages failed that were willing to participate in the surveys reported that one of the spouses had an obsessive interest in pornography.
Wow, I can see that. And combined with other factors, the if we're gonna go into the family destruction of it, the you know that the infidelity, and also the easiness of divorce. Like, if you notice how divorce law has become easy. It used to be impossible to get divorced back in the day, and now you could probably just go online and fill out a form and just download your divorce or something. Like it just like it's nothing. And it's also, it used to be such a shame to be divorced. That was a horrible, like, if you're the broken
Yeah,
family in the neighborhood, that was looked down upon. And now it's kind of, what, your parents are together, what are you,
I
so
know.
you're an alien, what
Yeah,
are you? So
yeah.
so going into the pornography and affecting that, how does someone uh you know become dependent on it? Like, where does it go from just, I don't know, seeing a picture online to, hours of video watching later.
Yeah, so think of it in the terms of what they call an addiction. You might soften it up and say, well, an addiction is what people say that they keep doing that they wish they didn't do, but they feel like they can't stop. Right. And that's where they call it an addiction. They make it almost feel like it's this chain it's some inescapable thing. You soften that up a little bit and you say, let's just call it an obsessive compulsive, maybe behavior, not disorder, because we don't go there, but an obsessive compulsive kind of behavior. What is it that creates obsessive compulsive behaviors? We'll look at the words. It's something that you're obsessing about. And because you're obsessing about it, what you think about, you tend to get emotional about. And what you tend to get emotional about, you tend to act on. And so the obsession that you have in your mind is what's going to end up being what you have a behavior about. Now, traditional psychology is going to look at the behavior and say, let's fix the behavior. That's not what we want to fix. We want to fix what's the thought process, what's the belief system that you're obsessing about. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting when we get into hypnotherapy. Most people would assume that if you have a if you have a pornography addiction, it's because you were exposed and you really liked the exposure and you can't get enough of it, and now you're just out of control. That the problem is the exposure to pornography. That's not why people go after dopamine hits, pleasure hits. They've developed some sort of a void inside themselves. They've developed some sort of a lack. They're not satisfied. They're not complete. They're not whole. They believe something about themselves that reduces their internal energy stores. So now they're trying to get energy from some external place. And what reduces our internal energy stores is the belief systems that we have about ourselves. So when we go back and do age regressions back in time, when we do hypnotherapy, we go to do this timeline kind of work, find out where this all started. I'll give you an example. A guy that spent 10 years every single week facilitating a quit pornography program for a group of guys. He called me and he said, I just feel like a hypocrite because I've never actually fixed my problem. Like, dude, like, come on in, let's fix it. It took one session. He spent 10 years journaling, the introspection, the self-awareness, the getting the site blockers put up and the deleting the social media and making sure that he wasn't alone and bored because that's when he was tempted the most, and trying to get married and hopefully that would make it go away, and all these little tips and tricks and distraction tools and coping techniques that traditional talk therapy will tell you, yeah, do that, do that, do that. We just did one hypnotherapy session on him. It all went back to when he was 10 years old and his dog died. And he had grief that was so intense, he felt a loss that he felt like was so intense he needed to feel better. So now this is where the classic addiction is escapism, right? He was trying to escape from this intense sensation of grief. His dad didn't care that the dog died, and that made him mad. And then his dad died. And then he had massive grief that he never actually resolved any of that with his dad. So he's got grief and anger going on here when he was 10 years old. Now he's 30 years old. And that's all he had to discover to say, oh, I guess I need to forgive my dad. I need to come to terms like my dog died. Okay, now I'm an adult and I can think through this. He was just still operating from a 10-year-old state of mind in that belief system. As soon as he resolved that, he was done. And like, done. It wasn't even interesting to him anymore. The pornography wasn't. Why? Because the only thing pornography provides, it's like overeating. It's like being a shopaholic or a workaholic. You think that you're getting something more out of it. But if you stop and say, no, I'm okay, I'm content, I'm whole, I'm satisfied, there's nothing else that you need.
Wow. It's a deep thought, right? Because as men, I can only speak for men, that we just we have these very powerful urges, and discipline sometimes is not strong enough to stop them. But I remember, for example, just with the case with me, the first time, I was young, and you get back then you had the pornography wasn't on paper. It wasn't like now online. You can just log on. You had to have like a magazine somewhere. But even before that, and I was young. I mean, not too young, but old enough to understand. I would just look at the Sears catalog, and
yeah, I remember that.
and, they had the lingerie thing there, and then that was my thing. That was my pornography until I discovered the harder magazines, and then I kind of collected a few of those, and you have friends and you interchange them. And then I remember when I actually a little older got a girlfriend, and we were, sexually active, it kind of erased the need for it. And I remember throwing away all the magazines. I was like, I don't need this anymore. I really felt fulfilled. And then we broke up. And I was like, why did I throw away those magazines? Like, I was like so mad at myself. But I think from there, it became like, not an addiction, but more like, even if I had a girlfriend, I'm not going to get rid of my little stash because I mean, I need it one day.
Yeah.
What psychological,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
is that normal?
Yeah. The reason for that, it's just like they say with good addiction psychology, that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. But the person who says, "Oh, when I get married, now that I have enough sex, I'm not gonna be addicted because I'm getting that dopamine hit, I'm getting a lot of testosterone flow, I'm getting all my pleasure that I need this way." What they're really doing is that they've conditioned themselves to need that on a very intense level. It's almost like an ADHD level, and this is what the science shows, that when you consume enough pornography, you become hyper aroused very easily, and that over sensitivity needs to be desensitized back to a normal level of arousal. Normal level of arousal um, would be something more along the lines of, you'd see something and you might have a biological hit to your biology where you get arousal response, and you might even think, is that a compatible sex partner? But then you remember that you have other things to do and you go take care of them, right? A hyper reaction to that would be, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruminate on that. I'm going to think a lot about that. I'm going to fantasize about that. And I'm going to go figure out where I can get more of that. And then you go and you act out on it, right? And what you're doing is you're creating these intense dopamine spikes, but because you're creating so many of them, it's the same thing when you masturbate. You are creating these dopamine spikes that then drop below baseline levels very, very quickly into depressive states, because you were actually searching for connection, not connection with yourself, not connection to a person on a screen, because you can't connect with that person on the screen. What your body is actually crying out for is exactly what it's wired to do, which is create babies. The reason you have an arousal response to go and have sex is so that you can create more connection with posterity, with procreation. So you have more people to connect with, right? And this is pretty well proven with some of the biology that's happening inside the body. But pushing it beyond that, when you see the hot jogger running down the street, it would be a normal reaction to say, "Hey, I have dopamine hit to that. That's nice, right?" If you ruminate on that, if you fantasize on that, now it's beginning to turn into testosterone. You get the sperm count increase, the blood flow increase. You get that, feeling in your chest or whatever. Um, that's now creating some sort of a sexual objectification over that, right? That's a sex object. And that's where this can become dangerous, because the more you create that objectification, the more you're conditioning your brain to only objectify women and not see them for who they are, not see them as human beings, not see them as people to have real relationships with. And that's why it's damaging to your ability to be social, because now you can't look a woman in the eye and be thinking about what she's thinking about, which is the conversation that you're having. You're thinking about her body, and out of your peripherals, you're trying to not look or like see, and you're getting all worked up romantically. Some of that is a chemical reaction, obviously. There's pheromones and all that. We know that. But when somebody does that, they tend to get very physical very quickly with those people.
And well, that's I could see that. I could definitely see that, because also you become accustomed to, or like the dopamine is not enough with like a dosage, right? Like the dosage goes, you have to keep incrementing the dosage. For example, like I was talking about the magazines, that was my first interaction, but I remember seeing the first tape, VHS, and a friend wanted me to hide it for him, and I watched it, and when it was different from just a still picture to the moving images and the sounds. That was like, whoa. Like, I think I was shaking when I saw
Yeah.
that, because
Yep.
the the dopamine that I was getting here once I saw this, it just wasn't even enough. Like the still image didn't get me here to this moving image. And is that a progression that you see a lot in your experience of just needing more and more bizarre and more shocking?
Yeah, but it's not so much that you need more dopamine. It's that you are believing a lie that you think will be resolved by going and doing that thing. Because it's a problem. It's a problem, right? It's a problem that you're enacting. But the only reason people have problems is because at one point there were solutions for them. If they're a chronic problem, right? They're creating this problem because they thought that it solved something. And at some point, you start realizing that it's not really solving a problem for them. But again, this is not a question in my mind. It's not a question of neuroscience. The chemicals are there, dopamine. Okay, there's tolerance, and so you need more, and you need more hardcore material. But that's not, I think, going to make as much sense by itself without the context of a religious or moral system. This is where my Christianity kicks in because it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know what your listeners are religiously, but when you have, for example, a false spirit whispering in your ears, a false spirit of lust, the spirit of lust is insatiable. And all it wants is greater and greater degrees of sensation, right? And so you get the person who's just looking at images, and if they're just kind of curious, they'll just keep looking at that forever, and that's all they ever look at for the rest of their life. But if they invite in that spirit of lust, lust is insatiable. It's never satisfied. And so it's going to want to go into deeper and deeper degrees of this. So now you have someone from images into videos. Now they're watching actual sex acts. And now they're down the slippery slope into watching male on male, female on female. And at first, when they were exposed to that, it felt very unnatural. And now they watch enough of it. It's like, oh, maybe I could try some of that. And maybe they start acting on it. And then they're into slasher, triple X rape stuff, the violent porn. And then they get into actual hookups. And then you get into weird crap like bestiality. And this is a slippery slope range that goes all the way down to death. Because then people start dying. There's murders, there's suicides in the porn industry. The average age of a porn star is 38, in case you're wondering.
Wow.
And they die off because of murders and STDs and heart attacks, drug abuse, suicides. I mean, these things, this is a real thing that you can look at statistically. And so this slippery slope, I think, is, again, when we talk about like, why is the porn industry there? It's to destroy the family. It's to destroy the person too. The devil wants to kill you, wants to kill your family, wants to kill everyone, right? And that might seem very intense to say, oh, well, yeah, but I'm just looking at pornography. Yeah, but if you take that to its extreme, that's not the habit that you want to continue to progress that way. Because when it progresses that way, I mean, and weird stuff starts happening. I've had guys that have come in and they're getting aroused by, wearing women's clothing. It's weird. It's unnatural, right? Or they get aroused by. I had one guy that came in and he was getting aroused by wearing diapers and sucking on binkies.
Okay.
And I'm like, what? But then we do hypnotherapy on these guys, and we find out why, based on their childhood and their initial exposure, why they have these special reactions and why they have fetishes, these certain fetishes. One guy had a foot fetish, right? Everyone seems to have, like, some people have weird fetishes, but like he couldn't even get aroused unless he was looking at someone's feet. And it turned out when he was 5 years old, his cousin, a girl, had come and put her feet on his groin, and he liked it, and he worked himself up so much with it. That was his first sexual experience, was with a girl's foot, right? He didn't know that. Now that he's 60 years old and he's wondering why he can't control his foot fetish. He has 1,000 pictures of girls' feet in his room. Like, it's just a subconscious thing. But now you could say that's just a fixation that the subconscious mind creates a belief system out of. But at the same time, if you do believe in an adversarial influence that is going to exacerbate that, because in the scriptures it says, for example, when temptation comes, it comes because of your own natural man and the enticement from the adversary. If that's the case, then temptation is made up of two parts. Yeah, there's a part of your own. There's also the adversary that's trying to play off that and make it worse. It means in every case of temptation, the adversary is at play. And that's where in our work, we've been able to cut our recovery times about in half by recognizing that there might be an adversarial influence here. If we can kind of call that out or recognize it, we don't even have to call it a demon. You can just call it a negative emotion or something like that, but you have to be able to dissociate from it. Say, that's not me, and it's been lying to me, and it's not doing me any good. When you can really get rid of that, that's when people leave the session after one session. They're 100%.
Wow. Especially the feet part, because there's actually sites that make a lot of money just women posting their feet and things like that. And I always thought like how do they have an audience for with this?
I
And
know.
I guess you prove that these people are out there really liking that. So if Nelson, if you didn't have, in all honesty, if you didn't have your strong Christian beliefs, would you be down this path? Would you be able to? I mean, I don't know. If you had like the problem, would you be able to resolve it without your religion, you personally? And I'm speaking that question is based on someone maybe that they say, well, I don't believe in, or they're atheists, whatever. If they, how do they solve it if they don't have because I think the Christian conviction is pretty straightforward and it's easy to understand it and abide by it. But if you don't have that, then is there a way? Is it harder? Can you still fix it? How would you fix it?
Yeah. The answer in my office work with people who are not Christians, that the only answer for that is the same as with the Christians, but it's in a different direction. And that is just that the person has to have enough information that outweighs their bad belief system, right? You have to hit a point where your understanding of why the problem is so destructive or not good for you, not worth your time, that it somehow outweighs the joy and the satisfaction that you think that you're getting from that. And some of that is just, you can sit down with these people who don't have any kind of a Christian background and just say, hey, just look at the science here. Just look at the science of what the statistics show is causing divorce. Do you want your marriage to keep going? And what the statistics show is happening in your brain because you keep triggering this pleasure center, and the pleasure center is in a completely different side of your brain than your future oriented goal executive decision making observation is doing. So that part of you that's like, hey, in my life this is what I want, that's not the same part of the brain that just wants pleasure immediately, that instant gratification. The more you give that, the less able you are to think about and achieve your long-term goals. That's proven, right? So you can start looking at the neuroscience. You can start looking at the statistics of all the early onset erectile dysfunction that all these youth are developing. Well, why? Because they're looking at so much freaking porn, they can't get aroused anymore with the spouse or the girlfriend that they're with, because they have to think about that. And now they want to invite their spouse or their partner to watch pornography with them because they can't get aroused with just each other. Like, that's a problem. That's a serious problem, right? But erectile dysfunction used to be due to all these other things that old men just got. Why are the young men getting it at record numbers now? Well, because exposure to pornography is going through the roof. So there's a scientific basis that you can say. But when somebody comes in, again, when we do the hypnotherapy with them, if they'll just be willing to explore why they have this problem, they'll probably realize that it all comes back to the universal negative self-thought that we all have. It's why we have all of our problems, because we create all of our own problems on some level. But that universal negative self-thought is, I'm not good enough.
Wow.
And if I'm not good enough, in what way am I not good enough? I'm not strong enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not faithful enough. I'm not perfect enough. In some way, I've established that I'm not enough. And as long as I believe that, and this is what's interesting, and maybe we can wrap up with this because I know we're coming down to the wire. But what I've noticed, and as a religious person, this was fascinating to me. all these people that came in, thousands of sessions that I've done, and we have this 95% recovery rate in 1 to 3 sessions. I'm like, wow, these people are having amazing transformations. At the end of the sessions, a few years ago, I was asking a lot of people that were coming out of trance, and they said they'd fixed their problem. And I said, what's the most important truth or lesson that you learned from this? What's the most powerful thing that you got out of being here right now? Because I was working with a bunch of mostly Christian people, I thought they were going to say something like, well, God just took that from me. God's amazing. Like, Christ's power is just, that's not what I found. Maybe 5 people on one hand I could probably count, and thousands of people who were very religious that came in that said, God just took that from me. What they reported instead was, I have the power to choose. I have the power to choose. I just did that. God didn't do that. He was hoping that I'd do that the whole time. He's not like some oppressive authority trying to oppress me and keep me under his power. He's trying to empower me. He wants me to rise up and recognize my own power. And if that's really true, where is that? Because there's an internal store of energy that happens when you believe the right things. And if you believe any form of self-criticism, which is what I am not good enough really is, self-criticism, self-rejection, self-loathing, self-judgment, not accepting yourself in some way, all of that depletes the internal energy stores. And this is also scientific. Our bodies are like a battery, and your mitochondria will literally start shutting down. Your stem cells will halt growth. Your immune system gets depressed. When you move into any level of self-criticism, it depletes the internal energy stores to where you don't have the energy to overcome your problem. The only way to overcome your problem is to move into a level of self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-esteem, self-confidence, that you can overcome the problem, a hope that you can overcome it, and that you have the power to overcome it. That movement will increase the internal energy stores as if you're a battery. It increases them to where now you can overcome the problem. But this is kind of paradoxical or counterintuitive, I should say, because people will come in and they'll say, well, I want to love myself. And I say, well, why don't you? And they say, well, love myself when I stop having this problem. See the problem?
Yeah.
Because their energy stores are too low, right?
And you got to love yourself first, right? In a way, it's a catch-22 in a way.
Bingo. Exactly. Because the person who's waiting to feel grateful until after they have the healing isn't going to get the healing. Because it's the gratitude and the energy that creates, because gratitude is the ultimate state of receiving, is the energy that creates, that's created by that allows the healing to take place. So in hypnotherapy, we want to get people back to that identity. We're not looking at the behavior, pornography, smoking, shopping, workaholic, whatever the problem is. We're not looking at the behavior, the action. We want to look underneath that. What's the emotion driving the action? We want to look underneath that. What's the imagination and the thought process driving that emotion? We want to look underneath that. What is the belief system that you've created that is informing those thoughts, that creates those emotions and that action? And then we want to look even underneath that. What are the core identity statement belief systems that you have about yourself that are creating this entire cascade of what you're calling your personality?
Before
That can change.
I really want to just, before we wrap it up right here, like, is masturbation bad?
It depends, is what I would say. Because I think that, again, this is from a Christian standpoint. There is neuroscience in it, and in the book I talk about some of the neuroscience, and part of it is what I just described to you, that the person who masturbates is looking for connection. When they do it with themselves, their dopamine levels drop below baseline levels, and they tend to get more depressed because they don't have someone to actually connect with. Because dopamine is very, very temporary. Testosterone is very temporary when you get these spikes. Oxytocin is the longest lasting. Oxytocin comes from actual real connection with people, with yourself, your understanding of yourself, with God. Oxytocin is that love chemical that will allow us to have an intimate relationship without sex for the rest of our lives. If you got married and your spouse couldn't have sex anymore, would you divorce her? Like, it would be the oxytocin that would allow you to continue in a relationship full of sacrifice and compassion for the rest of your life and be able to be with that person. So masturbation counteracts that. When I say it counteracts that, sure, if you're like doing it with your spouse or you're thinking about your spouse, I think that the science would back up the idea that would not create the depression hormones behind it. At the same time, from a religious standpoint, if the idea is like Christ says in the Sermon on the Mount, don't lust after a woman in your heart, or you're committing adultery, or don't look upon a woman to lust after her in your heart, or you're committing adultery. When you're going and masturbating, usually you're looking upon a woman to lust after her in your heart. Usually you're looking at pornography, or if you're doing it in the shower, there's no pornography. Like in your mind, you're still looking at pornography. You're just summoning up all those images so that you have something to get you aroused.
What if you're looking at your own self, right? Like, and you know,
I've seen that before. Yeah. That's interesting. And this is
and I
where I
understand
say
in the religious, I think the religious is pretty obvious as well that, you know, there's morality involved, but taking the morality and pausing it and just going into just the act of it,
yeah.
it wouldn't be
No, I
harmful.
think it's a very interesting conversation um, because most of the guys that come to me and they are religious, they're like, I got to stop my masturbation problem. And I say, why? Well, because I don't like it and I'm out of control and all that. To me, it's more of a question of the heart. Is the heart doing the thing that's violating your moral standards? And if it is, that's a problem. If it's not, okay, maybe that's not so much of a problem. And like my background, Mormon LDS background, here in Utah, everyone's LDS. In the LDS church, there's a very, very strong push for people to not masturbate. And they say it's for sexual purity and for chastity and all that. And that seems to make sense to most people. It's logical enough. They strive not to do it. And I don't know how many are actually successful, but whatever. But the history of the development of the church's stance on pornography or on masturbation since the 1800s matches the cultural understanding of it in the US. In the beginning, the church made a statement that you probably shouldn't masturbate because of a hygiene concern. They thought it was going to make you sick, that it was a disease. And then it morphed into, no, this isn't a hygiene problem. This is a psychological problem. You're going to go insane if you masturbate. So then it moved from physical hygiene into psychology, and then eventually it became a moral thing. And around the 1950s in the LDS church, one guy like went really big on, he was this, huge sexual purity guy. And he said, yeah, this sin is next to murder. Like, oh, wow. Well, part of that is because, you masturbate and those little babies should have been somewhere. It's like an abortion now because you're not using your sperm to procreate and you're just killing all that. Like, I mean, that's a pretty intense view on it, but that's the upper range. And so they would actually tell you, hey, if you need to masturbate, like hold the scriptures in one hand and tie your other hand to the bedpost and go to sleep like that. Wow. Or you need to imagine that you're in a bathtub full of worms, if you're having these urges so that you just feel disgusted by it. And it's like, to me, that's all way too extreme. And I do think that masturbation can probably be totally just fine, as long as it's not turning into like a problem of the heart where the person is now going and objectifying again in their heart and in their mind that woman that is not theirs, because now you're just doing the same thing as if you're looking at the pornography, as if you're actually creating the objectification compulsion all over again.
Okay, and just to finish that thought up, if this thing they call post nut clarity, or let me be classy, post orgasm clarity, that after you do the act, you sort of see the world in a little bit more calm or more intellectual. Is there any truth to that, or is that just a psychological imbalance because of the hormone release, or how do you see it?
Yeah, it's a hormone release. There is a dopamine spike, but more so it's a prolactin release. Prolactin gets released in huge amounts into the body after an orgasm. That's what makes you feel tired. But when it has that effect of making you tired, it also seems to give you this sense of relaxation. And anytime you relax, you're going to be thinking more clearly.
Okay. Is that good or bad?
I mean, it's just how the body seems to operate, I guess.
No, but meaning if someone is, let's say, using it for that,
to relax. If they're masturbating to relax, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, I think that comes down to what your moral system allows you to do as far as the act of masturbation, but it's not just the act of masturbation. In our come from, it's what are you doing in your mind that's creating that. especially if it's become something that's compulsive and you feel like it's an addiction, you can't control it. Because that happens too. We've had guys that have come in, they're like masturbating 10 times a day.
Oh,
It's like, whoa, man.
he's high strung, trying to get really relaxed. And then lastly, there's studies that they go, well, you need to release every so often as a man because of cancer concerns, prostate cancer, and so on. If I haven't really read those studies, but I've seen the data, but I don't know where the study came from or why. If it's true, how would you see someone that doesn't have a partner or married or younger and that data that could maybe affect their health if they don't? And I don't know. I'm not debating the data, but just if it was true.
Yeah, yeah, there is an inflammation that can happen in the testicles that they call blue balls, right? And there are clients who I've seen who have had that problem. I'm not exactly sure why they have that problem, but they do feel like they have a decrease in the inflammation when they go and masturbate. Um, Again, like that seems like a medical issue, right? Uh, at the same time, I don't buy the whole cancer idea. It doesn't make sense to me. If you were never in the habit of masturbating as a kid, then you know what a wet dream is. And those nocturnal emissions are what the body will naturally do if you don't have a way to release. It happens, once a month or so. It depends on the person, but the body will naturally release that. And there are plenty of people who have come in to see me who wanted to stop the masturbation, wanted to stop the pornography, and they were single. So they didn't even have a way to release. And they were successful in doing that. And they were totally happy with it and completely fine with it. And they didn't feel inflamed and they didn't, you know, one of the problems, going back to Freud, saying stuff like sex is a basic need. It's not. When I say that, it's not for survival. It's not like food or sleep that you need to survive or you will die. Sex is not that way. There are plenty of people that live their entire lives without sex and they survive, right? But it's the same with the masturbation. The body has its own way of releasing that stuff. But this becomes mainly a problem for guys who have been married, and then they come in and they're used to having a lot of sex. They're used to having the orgasms all the time, and they've been conditioned to feel like they need it a lot. And again, that's a mental association. That once you break that mental association on the subconscious level, they don't feel like they need it as much and they can return back to normal states of arousal and say in their mind, I'm only going to get aroused or allow myself to get aroused when I'm with somebody that I feel like I can have sex with, which is hopefully, in the bonds of marriage. But this is a level, there are degrees of what we would call like purity, right? Or virtue when it comes to this. I believe that you can truly get to a point with your partner, with your spouse, whoever it is you're being intimate with, that they're the only ones that you allow yourself to get aroused by. And that becomes a natural instinct and it actually increases the intimacy through the roof. And you're talking about removing that high statistical chance of divorce by allowing yourself to only have eyes for your spouse. And this is what Christ told us to do, right? Cleave unto your wife and none else.
Amazing. Thank you, Nelson. Amazing chat. I mean, I don't even know how long, it's been like 2 hours, but it's just been so interesting because everything you're saying makes sense, from the standpoint of just common sense. Like we don't have to go deep into, medicine or science to understand what you're saying makes sense. And how do we find you, and what kind of services do you offer? And if a guy that's watching this says, you know what, I want to stop my problem here,
Yeah.
how can they find you to make that attempt?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to leave your audience with a free training as well, but they can find my information at nolimitshypnotherapy.com. We're out of Spanish Fork, Utah. And like I said, we do remote sessions all over the world. So we're seeing people, in Argentina and Japan and all that. People who are calling in, doing hypnotherapy over Zoom doesn't decrease the efficacy, at least not from what we've found. So that seems to work. And nolimitshypnotherapy.com, they can go to that site and they can buy my book there if they want. It's only $7. They can get the book there. They can get additional training. There's a master class on why people have their pornography problems and what they can do about it and how they can book a call with us if they want to. But this book, Your Problem Isn't Pornography, for people who are interested, it did hit #1 on Amazon in 5 categories, including Christian self-help and addiction and recovery. And I think it's partly because this discussion that you just had with me is that it's just common sense. It's common sense. How is the brain working? How do we get ourselves out of these problems? And in the book, if you get the book, there's a half-hour long video training on how to begin to redirect your subconscious mind out of problems, not just bad habits, cravings and stuff like that, but out of anger problems and fear problems and stuff like that. You can do it in 5 or 10 seconds if you learn how to do it right. But there's a half-hour training that is in here, and I can actually
that's
give
a
you the
book.
link.
Is that $7?
This one's the $7 book,
And it has this
will,
half an hour training.
yeah, because there's a link in there that takes you to
That's a great
through the
deal.
training. But for you guys, I'm going to give you the free link to the download for you and all your listeners.
We'll put it down here in the descriptions. Thank you so much for that, and thank you, because it's necessary. And I think people, a lot of times, we're shamed, and if you have something that needs to be taken care of, such as, you can't stop, just and watching porn, like, I think that you've given them, at least for me, a very non-judgmental answer, because it's hard to go, hey, I have a problem, right? It seems that if they contact you, you're going to be like, yeah, it's so does, 20 other guys that I talk to every day. So that, so thank you for being so open, and for making this so available. Because I think, not that a woman wouldn't be able to do it. I think it's just, you want to connect with someone that kind of understands that you're not a bad person because you have this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, everyone has problems, and everyone has a reason for their problems. Okay, let's fix them together.
You're gonna give us an exercise, a practice.
Yeah, it's a 30-minute training on how to direct your subconscious mind.
Okay.
Out of problems. So later you can use it within 5 or 10 seconds. It really will become like your new best friend if you learn how to use it.
Okay.
You can kind of do your own self-therapy on it. And maybe you can collapse your cravings and addictions with just that. Maybe you can do it with just the information in the book. But if you have to get out the big guns, just make sure that you're finding somebody that is more of a specialist in doing it, and they can track their recovery rates, and they can actually show you that and how they get those results.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nelson. And by the way, all the guys that were waiting for the tips on how to hypnotize a girl to hey, come here, fall in love with me. Hey, now you're in love. Now you kiss me. Now you're my wife. I don't think this was the episode. We'll do another episode.
No, that's not true, because I think it was, because if you remove the neediness and like, I need the connection, the desperation, you become more attractive. And on a subconscious level, all that information we were talking about passing between the two of us, in the ether, that is a real phenomenon. When you remove the emotions that are keeping you from connecting to somebody, and then that person can become more social, more communicative, more seductive. That's your podcast. You will naturally become more magnetic that way.
And we didn't even touch on that. And we have to do another episode, because we like self-hypnosis, right? Like, that's a whole nother world. Can I hypnotize myself to be more seductive?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I look in the mirror and I go, I don't know, give me some information, like, hey, I'm seductive, I'm beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it would be more along the lines of like, I'm the kind of person that is attracting the person to me that I want, right? And you have an idea of what that person is, but relentless work on yourself is what makes you attracted to other people.
Okay.
So people who are lazy, who are slobs, who are not doing anything in their lives, that they're not attractive to other people. And so when you start getting your life in order, it happens because of these internal belief systems and identity statements that you really believe. If you really believe that you're a fit person, you're going to go to the gym and you're going to eat well. That alone will make you attractive, right? And so there's these internal belief systems that when you wipe them out, yeah, you can become the, I'm a swinging player kind of a mentality, and I know exactly how to pick up all these girls, and they can feel that from me.
And have you, is the phenomenon of we've been trying to end the episode for like 2 hours. If the phenomenon of you know, have you sometimes you just feel someone's watching you? They didn't say anything, but you look and they are, and or vice versa, you're looking at someone and they kind of feel it and they look your way. Is that in the same world as hypnotherapy, neuroprogramming, or is that something completely different?
Yeah, this is getting into more of like the there's a proprioception that happens where you're kind of aware of how your body is and all that. But there's an electromagnetic field that's put off by every single individual into a torus field around your body, and that is picked up by other people about 6 feet away. And sometimes, you could say, oh, that's a field, electromagnetic field based on emotion, but thoughts do not have that 6-foot restriction. And if you look at people like Dr. William Tiller, who was a physicist that was studying intention, he was studying how far you can send your intention to, for example, change the pH level of your water. And he would turn it up or down by 1 whole pH level. He could do it in London in his lab, but he could also do it from London to Australia in the same amount of time. Right? So thoughts are moving. It's the same kind of phenomenon that happens when you're going to call someone, they're calling you, and that was really, really weird. I haven't talked to them in 2 years and they were calling me. Like, that's a synchronicity that happens. It's more of a quantum science question. I went to 2 meditation retreats last year where they trained us in how to do that, how to be aware of something in a direction behind you without seeing it. It's called vibrovision. They actually trained us how to see things without our eyes. We'd wear blindfolds and go through an obstacle course and do different games and stuff. But you're learning to train an intuition inside your body that is naturally an antenna to getting information from everything around you. And it's a phenomenon that you can train.
Okay, but is that like its own? Isn't that part of this science? It's kind of its own realm.
Yeah, I mean, it could be in the sense that this information that's passing between 2 people, for example, if you're in a meditation and I'm in meditation, it doesn't matter what distance we're at. And I could show you some of the studies as to why this is, but or what studies they are that prove that this is the case. But if you're meditating and I'm meditating on the same thing with an intention to connect with each other, we connect. And our brain waves will actually sync up so well that if they shine a flashlight in your eyes over there, my brain will light up as if a flashlight was shown in my eyes. Now that's this information that gets passed back and forth. If you go read the book by Greg Braden called The Divine Matrix, the science behind how this is working is very, very cool.
So cool. There's so much here, and so basically you can't do, or can you suggest something to a woman like, hey, I see you looking at me and you like me, and kind of like her, like, yeah, or is that possible?
I mean, you could say exactly that and then see how she responds. She might resonate with it.
I'll let you know what happens if I get slapped or something.
Yeah, do it, man. Do it.
You want me? Come here. I'm gonna do something, but thank you so much. And last, can you leave before you leave? Can you hypnotize my audience to subscribe? Just really quickly, can you suggest it?
Hey guys,
listen up, guys. I want you guys to pay attention right now to Nelson right now. Okay.
You guys are all guided by the infinite intelligence within you, and if there's something here that Q has offered to you and it resonates with you, and you are ready and willing and able to connect yourself with this information, go and subscribe. That's going to be, if it's the best thing for you, go do it.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm subscribed at work because I'm about to subscribe myself. Thank you so much, Nelson. I really appreciate it. Great chat. Thank you. You're amazing.
All right. Hey, man, take it easy. Thank you.
You too.